Story number one comes from Indy, where the Colts lose at Houston to fall to 4-4. There were certainly some drops in this game. I know the tape bros think that Anthony Richardson played a far better game than the box score showed. Bottom line, dude is completing a mind-blowingly unreal 44.4% of his passes and pulled himself out of the game because he was tired for a snap on Sunday. Fast forward to Tuesday, Colts make the announcement. Anthony Richardson, after 10 NFL starts since being the number 4 overall pick in the draft, has been benched for Joe Flacco. Evan, what is your reaction to the Anthony Richardson benching?
Well, first of all, in this game, he went 10 for 32, and he did have some nice throws earlier in the game. He had 6 for 45 on the ground. He also took 5 sacks. He fumbled twice, lost one, threw a pick. I don't think that we could come out of that saying that he was like a successful. And then he pulls himself out of the game on a critical 3rd and goal play in the 3rd quarter. He only sat out one play, okay? But that clearly rubbed his teammates the wrong way. Ryan Kelly, the longest tenured Colt on the roster and like a team captain, a guy who's played hurt, has been a Colt for a really long time. He was outwardly critical of Anthony Richardson after the game. And that, to me, I think that was maybe even more the deciding factor than the play of Anthony Richardson, because I do totally understand the thought process behind letting Anthony Richardson ride it out. He only started 1 year in college. You knew that he was a raw developmental project. You let him ride it out. You let him take his lumps. But if you are losing the locker room, because this guy, and these guys know that Joe Flacco can complete passes. Yeah. But if you're losing the locker room, then that can be the impetus to make the switch, sit him down, let him take the breather that he obviously needs, right? If you're losing Ryan Kelly, like that's the dude literally snapping the ball to the quarterback too.
Yeah.
So that to me was probably the deciding factor for Shane Steichen.
There is absolutely no doubt that Joe Flacco gives this team a better chance to win football games right now. Absolutely zero doubt whatsoever. Can they make the playoffs with Joe Flacco? I think so. Can they win the Super Bowl with Joe Flacco? I don't think so at all. And so that's where you get like these misaligned incentives where, yeah, if you're a player in the locker room, you want Joe Flacco out there. If I'm a coach and I'm coaching for my job or a GM and I need wins for my job, I want Joe Flacco out there. But for the long-term health of the franchise, use the number 4 overall pick, and then you give the guy 10 starts. I don't know about that, man. I mean, that for the long term, but I totally get it. And like,
if it was that simple, then I think that they would be making a big mistake.
Yeah. So look, like, I actually think that there's a good chance that Richardson makes more starts this year. Maybe he sits down for 2, 3, 4 weeks and comes back in. But in the meantime, I mean, massive upgrades across the board. Josh Downs immediately. Like, I haven't even looked at stuff for this week upcoming yet in terms of DFS stuff. But my first thought is like, man, I want to play Josh Downs because Josh Downs is a baller. And I think I want to play Pittman too. Whereas before, and I think it's better for Jonathan Taylor also, before I was like, I don't want to play any of these guys really. But now with Flacco, Evan, I feel like it's wheels up for Downs, Pittman, Taylor, maybe even some secondary guys like A.D. Mitchell and Alec Pierce. So what do you think about Colts stuff going forward now with Flacco?
They do have a pretty brutal schedule coming up. They have the Vikings next. The Vikings have had some games where they gave up points, but for the most part, they played really good defense this year under Brian Flores. Then the Bills, they consistently churn out good defenses. Then the Jets, and the Colts haven't had their bye yet either. So, I don't know. I'm probably going in a little skeptical on Flacco, but there's no question that Michael Pittman and Josh Downs get significant box score boosts.
The last thing on this, it was good to see Jonathan Taylor back from injury. And, I was worried he was coming back too soon. It seemed like it was pretty quick for him to come back. I thought he looked really good. 20 carries, 105 yards, 1 touchdown. Jonathan Taylor handled 100% of the running back carries in this game. So, and, with Joe Flacco out there, you have a chance to catch more passes. I think you'll be in the red zone more. You won't get goal line touchdowns stolen from you by Anthony Richardson. So I think a pretty nice boost here for JT as well, as long as he can sustain health.
Absolutely. And, I talk a lot about players coming back from high ankle sprains. Jonathan Taylor has had several over the past 3 seasons. but no question, I think this is the best that he's looked in a while. So I'm with you. And also, yeah, and as you mentioned, like this gives him the chance to have games where he catches 3 or 4 passes.
Mhm.
He was not getting that with AR-15 in there.
All right. Let's stay in the AFC South for story number 2 this week comes out of Houston. Texans hang on for a 23-20 win over those Colts. Again, they do it on the back of Joe Mixon, by the way, which we'll get to. But the big news came Tuesday. Steph Diggs went down with a non-contact knee injury, looked bad. Turns out it is bad. He is the latest wide receiver to be lost for the year. Steph Diggs, torn ACL, will miss the rest of the season. I should note, Evan, Nico Collins fully expected back by week 10 here. But what is your reaction to Steph Diggs done for the year?
That's a good question. I think that, yeah, as you mentioned, they have gotten nothing out of Xavier Hutchinson. They've got Robert Woods and John Mechie there as options to replace Steph Diggs in the slot. But I don't know. I mean, they have been trying to trade John Mechie for a while. I don't know that Robert Woods has anything left at all. So I don't know. It's a dicey situation. I think they're going to lean heavily on Joe Mixon, who, by the way, speaking of running backs coming off high ankle sprains, looking good. Joe Mixon has been cruising. Last 3 appearances, averaging 23.7 touches for 130 total yards per game and 1.7 touchdowns per game over his last 3. I think that they'll continue to lean heavily on him, but it definitely brings down the outlook for C.J. Stroud in the short term, and they've got the Jets coming up.
So I thought it's telling that Xavier Hutchinson is giving them absolutely nothing, and they still have not expanded the roles of John Mechie or Robert Woods. Like, they're not even giving these guys routes. Hutchinson's out there in place of Nico running all the routes. So I liked John Mechie coming into this year as like a 20th round sleeper after the Noah Brown trade or after the Noah Brown release, but they have shown no sign whatsoever on that. So my take on this right now with Diggs out is just more Nico Collins when he comes back, more Tank Dell, more Dalton Schultz, and as Evan said, a ton of Joe Mixon, who honestly, Stroud has been like average to bad, especially in fantasy. Joe Mixon is the one that's actually been carrying the team. 29 touches, 134 total yards, and a touchdown in this game. I mean, it's just wild that Joe Mixon is finding explosiveness here, and I think they're going to continue to rely on him a ton going forward. One thing that I would say about it's CJ Stroud. I don't know if you noticed this, Evan, and I'm sure it's there in the data. I haven't even looked. Feels like Stroud's under pressure on every play.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
Cannot protect
At
him
one point during the game
whatsoever.
on Sunday, he was under pressure on I saw 71% of his dropbacks.
Yeah. I mean, and so no matter who's out there, Nico Collins, Steph Diggs, like it's going to be hard to win if that's going to be the setup. So they have to solve that also.
One thing that they could do, especially if they don't like Mechie or Woods, and I don't think that they have any reason, or Xavier Hutchinson for that matter, and they really don't have any reason to, is they could play more 2 tight end sets, which could maybe help their protection. They have Dalton Schultz, obviously, who they gave a big deal to in the offseason. They might be regretting that right now. But they used a 4th-round pick on Cade Stover, a pretty good athlete, played at Ohio State, was a Mackey Award finalist. Okay, he did not win the Mackey. Brock Bowers did, which, by the way, Brock Bowers is like an animal. But Cade Stover, they could play him more.
Yeah, agreed. By the way, like I don't want to get on here and complain. I hate whining, but it's just crazy how many wide receivers this year have gotten hurt relative to running backs. I mean, so many good wide receiver picks: Chris Godwin, Rashee Rice, Mike Evans, Nico Collins, Rashid Shaheed. Now Steph Diggs is done. I mean, it's crazy. Massive outlier in wide receiver injuries this year relative to running back injuries. All right. Number 3 story comes out of Baltimore. Literally seconds before we were about to start recording this show, get an alert that there was a trade. The Ravens have given up a late round pick swap to the Panthers to get Deontay Johnson. So Deontay Johnson, obviously in the final year of his contract, Panthers aren't going anywhere. They did the right thing by getting rid of Deontay Johnson, getting something like a 6th round pick. I'm surprised, man. I didn't think that this was what the Ravens really needed to put them over the top. I thought they could use secondary help, a bunch of help in other spots. Wide receiver wasn't one that was really on my radar for the Ravens. So I was a little bit surprised here. I thought Bucks, Chiefs, Texans, Commanders, they could all use Deontay Johnson, I thought, more than the Ravens, but clearly Ravens thought it was the right move. Evan, what do you think of Deontay Johnson deal going down here today?
I think it was a great move by the Ravens. The Ravens didn't give up pretty much anything. They're not
Yeah.
on the hook for any kind of a contract next year. Deontay Johnson's deal is up. I think it's kind of ironic that one of the reasons that they lost to the Browns on Sunday was because they dropped so many passes, even on defense. Like Kyle Hamilton had drops on defense that were critical. But on offense, I mean, everybody was dropping passes. And they go out and get a guy who has a history of dropping passes. Deontay Johnson can get open, though. He's going to add a new dimension to their offense. Rashad Bateman, I think, has had a pretty nice season, but he had a bad game on Sunday.
Yeah.
And I think Deontay Johnson, sooner rather than later, is going to jump ahead of Rashad Bateman. But that all of a sudden gives them a pretty nice 3-receiver set. They've got Mark Andrews back cooking. He's had, 3 or 4 good games in a row.
Yeah. So a few things on this. This game that they lost to the Browns, like they just ran bad. I mean, they had so many drops. Rashad Bateman lost the ball in the sun. They didn't play a great game, but they still easily could have won. They also ran bad that this was Jameis Winston and not Deshaun Watson or DTR in there. But anyways, I thought Lamar Jackson was absolutely incredible in this game again. Could have had a bigger day, had some penalties that brought back big plays. Lamar still went for another 25 fantasy points. I mean, now you add Deontay Johnson here to Lamar. If he had the tush push like Jalen Hurts has the tush push, he'd be absolutely breaking fantasy. As it is, Lamar is like one of the best assets to have. I thought Zay Flowers looked awesome in this game despite coming in questionable with the ankle injury. He goes 7, 115, 0 on 12 targets. I'm curious, Evan, if you think the Deontay Johnson addition hurt Zay Flowers at all. Deontay Johnson has been a very good target earner in his career.
Yeah, he has. We just got this news, so I haven't digested it fully, but I would say that, I mean, it can't be a good thing for Zay Flowers. I think that in the interim, we're not going to have to worry about Zay Flowers too much in the short term. But yeah, eventually, I mean, Deontay Johnson, once he earns a full-time role, that could definitely damage Zay Flowers a bit.
Right. And it's not ideal for Mark Andrews either, right? I mean, Mark Andrews had his highest route rate since week 1 in this game. Mark Andrews ran 32 routes on 43 Lamar dropbacks. And in this game, this was one that they trailed a lot. And I think when they trail a lot, that's when you're going to see Mark Andrews out there more. But clearly, Deontay Johnson coming in and earning 4, 5, 6, 8 targets in a game is not going to be good for Mark Andrews here either. So yeah, super interesting trade for sure. Let's go to story number 4. The Cleveland Browns. I mean, when I go to bed at night, Evan, I dream of Jameis Winston starts. And we got one here, and he did not disappoint. Deshaun Watson, obviously dunzo. Jameis starts this home game against the Ravens, throws for 334 yards and 3 touchdowns with no interceptions, wins the game 29-24. Browns get their second win of the season. I mean, just incredible how immediately getting Deshaun Watson out of this offense, immediately, no matter who it is, immediately they look so much better. Deshaun Watson started 19 games for the Browns. He had 0 300-yard passing days. Joe Flacco and Jameis Winston have now posted 6 300-yard passing days out of 7 starts that they've made for the Browns. I mean, anyone get in there is just a huge upgrade. Tons of waiver wire stuff here also on Tillman and Elijah Moore. Talk to Daigle about that. Hopefully you guys caught that show. But yeah, Evan, what did you think of the Jameis experience returning to our lives on Sunday?
Well, I've been saying it since last year that I didn't think that Deshaun Watson even wanted to be in there playing. And I think that, the energy, even last year when Joe Flacco went in, the energy surrounding the Browns was just totally different. The energy on Sunday was totally different, from the fans to the players. I mean, the players were defeated.
Yeah.
Anytime that Watson would be in the huddle. You remember Amari Cooper was rolling his eyes, requesting a trade. It's either Jameis Winston. You know who wants to be in there is Jameis Winston. And that was evident via his actions and his words before the game, his performance on the field during the game, and his actions and his words after the game. And he was like a legitimately inspirational individual on the field out there. Again, the Browns had just moved on from their number 1 receiver. Jameis don't care.
Yeah.
He's out there absolutely balling. Cedric Tillman, My pull-up play of the week went nuts. He has got uh, uh, 21 targets over the last 2 games, looking like a true number one receiver. Now, he has had some catches on blown coverages and things, but I mean, he's got the tools. And Jameis will throw the ball into tight windows. So even when Cedric Tillman isn't open, I'm excited about Cedric Tillman moving forward with Jameis at quarterback. But no question, I mean, this was an awesome performance from Jameis, and the energy of the Browns changed like on a dime.
Yeah, hopefully you already had added Cedric Tillman after the Amari Cooper trade, after he played so well in week 7 ahead of the matchup against the Ravens. But if you had not added Cedric Tillman, clearly he should be a priority for you there. I know that the Ravens were without Marlon Humphrey. I know they were without Nate Wiggins. I know that everybody has the same game plan, but man, if Jameis is out there the rest of the year, this is going to be really exciting. Which brings me to my question, Evan. Do you think Jameis will be out there for the rest of the year? My initial thought was they kind of want to get a look at DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. But if Jameis is playing like this and continues to play well, I kind of think they'll just ride it out with Jameis. How likely do you think it is he makes all the starts the rest of the way for the Browns?
I think that based on the words of Kevin Stefanski yesterday, and he seemed adamant that Jameis is our quarterback, and this is a player that you can rally behind. I mean, things can go sideways with Jameis Winston. We know that.
Yeah.
That's why he hasn't started a game before Sunday since 2022. But I mean, I also think that he's maybe matured in his life, and maybe that'll translate onto the football field going forward. I think that as long as they can stay competitive in games and or win games, Jameis Winston will be in there. Once the season gets out of hand, maybe they're eliminated from playoff contention. I mean, they're 2-6. It's going to be really tough.
Yeah.
They're going to have to rip off a bunch of wins in a row. But once they're eliminated from playoff contention, then I think it could be DTR time.
Yeah, so schedule is not ideal for Jameis. Chargers, Saints, Steelers, Broncos, Steelers, Chiefs next. So that 4-game stretch here coming up in a few weeks, it goes Steelers, Broncos, Steelers, Chiefs. That's going to be tough on Jameis. He's going to turn the ball over. I mean, he's going to turn the ball over in those spots for sure. I just think you kind of have to live with guys like Flacco and Jameis turning the ball over, because aggression over the cover two is like what's winning now in the passing game in the NFL. Do you have any take on Elijah Moore or Jerry Jeudy, Evan? I have always liked Elijah Moore. He was the 34th overall pick. I believe it was like the 2022 draft or something. I mean, he's not old. He's still only like 24 years old, I believe, is Elijah Moore. I think it can be a pretty good slot asset for them. Any thoughts on him or Jeudy going forward with Jeudy?
Well, I saw that Jacob Gibbs of CBS Sports, who keeps close tabs on first read targets, Elijah Moore had the most first read targets. That means they're calling plays specifically for Elijah Moore on the team on Sunday. I mean, I just think that Jameis Winston being in there raises the expectation for everybody. I mean, Deshaun Watson had not thrown for 200 yards all season.
Yeah.
Jameis Winston comes in immediately and throws for 334 and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So, and I think that it was a little bit of an easier matchup than you might think when they're facing the Ravens. The Ravens were down their number 1 and 2 corners. They also benched their starting free safety, Marcus Williams. So they have a lot of problems in the secondary. Yeah. They actually should address that via trade. I know you were saying that before the show. Yeah. You think that the Ravens should have maybe gone after secondary help instead of Deontay Johnson. They got Deontay Johnson for cheap. Right. But either way, I think that now we have 300 passing yards within our range of outcomes. That can help everybody. That can make Jerry Jeudy a factor. It can make Cedric Tillman maybe a wide receiver 3 with wide receiver 2 upside each week. It can make Elijah Moore, a wide receiver 3 potentially every week, and it can help David Njoku. David Njoku also had a really nice game on Sunday.
Oh, yeah. David Njoku is a total smash right now with Jameis. Last thing on the Browns, I know it's going under the radar. There's been so much news, but Nick Chubb got 18 opportunities here. I mean, I don't even know if Nick Chubb was going to play this year, and now he's back here in week 8 getting 18 opportunities. Now, he hasn't been that efficient yet. I think he'll be more efficient going forward. He has that matchup against the Saints coming up, which is really good. So I don't want to sleep on Nick Chubb. Like, he's made an impressive return here.
He made a couple of jump cuts where you think, man, he's pretty close. He's definitely further along than I think any of us anticipated at this point in the season.
Story number 5 comes out of Miami, and it is good news. Welcome back to Tagovailoa. Dolphins did lose on a last-second field goal to the Cardinals, but man, it was so good to see this offense functioning at a reasonable / high level once again, just immediate unlock for Devon Achane, who goes for 97 rushing yards on 10 carries, 50 receiving yards on 6 catches, and a touchdown. I mean, Devon Achane, when Tua's been out there, 19% of the targets in week 1, 18% of the targets in week 2, 21% of targets in week 8. He has 20 catches in those 3 games on 22 targets. I mean, it's exciting for Achane especially, and I know Tyreek and Waddle didn't have great games here. Obviously exciting for them to have Tua back as well. Evan, what did you think of Tua's return to the saddle this week?
It kind of went as expected. I mean, I think that I was on the over in this game. This one flew over the over in this one. It was just back to normal. Devon Achane is like a first round player again. A first round fantasy player again. Everything. Tyreek went 6 for 72 and 9. He will have bigger games in the future. Same with Jalen Waddle. But I mean, the offense looked functional. It's just wild to me how, and they can be a shootout team now. It's just wild to me how many points is Tua Tagovailoa worth, like against the spread. I mean, he's worth like freaking 13 points against the spread. No quarterback is supposed to be worth more than what, like 4.5 maybe?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, we've seen some ones that are worth like 6, 7, 8. I mean, it's just they
Peyton
just
Manning back in the day, like versus Curtis Painter, was probably like. But
right.
I mean, this is like that. This is almost like that.
Right. And it's the Dolphins' fault. I mean, they could have had Joe Flacco. I mean, they could have had Jameis Winston. You know what I mean? Like, they just let it get to Tyler Huntley and Skylar Thompson, and Mike McDaniel choked. But yeah, anyways, I did want to note that Raheem Mostert was active here, healthy, stole 2 touchdowns, 1 true goal line rep that Raheem Mostert converted, and then 1 from 6 yards out. I'm not like worried about that for Achane, but it's just worth noting that, like, yeah, he could get vultured at the 1 yard line. Dolphins play the Bills, Rams, Raiders next 3 matchups coming year for Tua. By the way, Tua was like running at one point, and I think like everybody had the same reaction. It was like, oh my God, dude, don't run. Like get down, slide, like do whatever it takes. But yeah, he seemed fine. He was not hesitant to run whatsoever. So, good to see on Tua for sure. All right. We're going to go alphabetical order here now by conference. Start with the NFC. Let's go to the Arizona Cardinals. I thought one of, if not the best Kyler Murray game of the season. Goes to Miami, goes over 300 yards, 26 of 36 passing. Cardinals get the walk-off win to improve to 4-4. Evan, what do you think of Kyler and the Cardinals' last-second win over the Dolphins?
Well, I think that, it took a while, but this is what you and I envisioned for the Cardinals offense when the season, before entering the season. This is the kind, Marvin Harrison is the number 1, beating Jalen Ramsey for a 22-yard touchdown. Trey McBride goes for over 100. James Conner was inefficient in this game, but, he's got a full workload. Kyler's looking great. And it's kind of interesting if you think about it. Kyler came back from his knee injury about halfway through last season, and we're about halfway into this season. So this is really his first, now he's like entering season 2 of the Drew Petzing offense, like at the midpoint of this season. So now he's got a full season under his belt of this system. Maybe we'll start to see him take steps forward. I thought it was a really promising effort. I'm not sure what it means for going forward, but I mean, we know that all these dudes had this in their bag, Harrison and Trey McBride especially, and it was just good to see it come to fruition, in a shootout game against Miami.
Yeah, I'm still a little skeptical on the Marvin Harrison stuff. So if you wanted to sell Marvin Harrison now off this game, I wouldn't kill you for it. This was a 20.0 yard ADOT game for Marvin Harrison, longest of the season. He caught 6 of them. It's really tough to do, to catch these passes deep down the field. And he only had a 19% target share, did Marvin Harrison, which is like fine, but far from elite. He's still only at 21% for the whole season. So I still have some worries here on Marvin Harrison. It was great to see him have a breakout game here for sure. I still have some concerns on him going forward. But yeah, let's go to Atlanta. Kirk Cousins did it again to the Bucs, man. I mean, just 4 weeks after absolutely torching the Bucs for 509 yards and 4 touchdowns, Cousins does it again in Tampa this time, 276 yards, 4 touchdowns, no INTs, as Falcons win 31-26. I mean, clearly the Bucs have secondary problems, but also clearly Kirk Cousins has their number in a big way. Super impressive. Evan, what do you think of Falcons win in Tampa?
Yeah, the Bucs have all kinds of problems. I mean, they can't rush the passer. They were without their number one. They were getting torched before this, and they were without their number one cornerback, Jamel Dean, in this game. So, but I mean, the Falcons. I try not to take away from teams capitalizing on good matchups. I mean, that's what good offenses do. And the Falcons right now look like a really good offense. Their offensive line has stayed healthy and cohesive. Bijan had a nice game here, but it could have been better. He had a 36-yard, an awesome 36-yard touchdown run called back. Kyle Pitts, Leone's starting to chirp, by the way. Kyle Pitts has strung together several good games. He looked legit fast on his, I think it was a 49-yard touchdown. I mean, that's the fastest I've seen him move in a while. So maybe he's rounding into form. Darnell Mooney continues to have the best season of his career. Yeah, I mean, the offense right now is hitting on all cylinders in Atlanta. This is definitely what Leone envisioned coming into the year.
No doubt. No doubt. And yeah, like I talked about this on the solo pod. You guys can check it out, but definitely burying guys too soon, like Pitts and Swift, who we'll get to, like it's a danger to say, oh, it's been 2 weeks. They happen to be weeks 1 and 2, or it's been 3 weeks. It's weeks 1, 2, and 3. It's guys are going to have bad games. I'm still like skeptical on Pitts in the same way I am skeptical on Marvin Harrison, but yeah, it's great to see and certainly exciting the way they've played lately. The Bijan thing that Evan mentioned, I think that's the 3rd long touchdown that Bijan's had called back by penalty this year. And a couple of them have been weak calls also. I mean, I think Bijan has been awesome this year and just running a little bit bad in the stats department for sure. All right, Carolina. Bryce Young back in the saddle here in Denver. I mean, just absolutely no chance for the Panthers as they fall behind 28-7 in the third quarter, end up losing 28-14. Big news, though, Evan, after this game is what we already talked about. Deontay Johnson is gone. I'm sure if someone will take him, they'll get rid of Adam Thielen as well. And so what you have is Xavier Legette and you have Jalen Coker, who I think are interesting guys to talk about. Legette was had a touchdown and also had to play deep up the sideline that he probably should have had, just barely couldn't come up with it. But I like Legette and I like Coker. We talked about him on the waiver pod as well. Evan, what are your thoughts on Panthers now that we know Deontay Johnson is no longer on this team?
Yeah, so that's going to be the 2 receiver set, right?
I mean, I don't see how you could play Mingo or anyone else over Coker. I mean, Coker looks legit good, and Mingo has done
Coker
nothing.
has strung together some nice games.
Yeah.
And, I mean, he's got tools. He was undrafted out of Holy Cross. Has there ever been another NFL player out of Holy Cross? I don't know. But he's big and he's athletic and he's making the most of his opportunities. And obviously they feel really good about giving them to him because they just traded away their target leader.
Yeah.
So I don't know what is the deal on Andy Dalton. I would like to get him back in there.
Yeah, at this point, I'd be surprised if they went back to Andy Dalton, but I've not seen any updates on him. But I think it's similar to winning games is not what the Panthers want to do anyways. Right. So, I think it's a no-brainer to keep starting Bryce Young here. Only thing that I wanted to note 2 notes for me on the Panthers. First, if you have Panthers guys on your fantasy team, you better be sure they play in garbage time because there's going to be a ton of garbage time. And this week, for the first time, I saw a bunch of Miles Sanders, not Chuba Hubbard, in garbage time. So that's something that I want to look at closer and watch. The second thing that I would say is Panthers' schedule in the fantasy playoffs is so good. Now, it might not matter. They're like so inept, but they play Cowboys, Cardinals, Bucks in the fantasy playoffs. So, Coker and Legette stuff, if you're in a deeper league, I think is interesting to look at for sure. Let's go to Chicago. So it was a weird game, man, and I'll get to the Hail Mary, but I thought the Bears got outplayed pretty severely for much of this game. They were fortunate the Commanders had a bunch of red zone mistakes, led to 4 field goals. Commanders were up 12-0 on 4 field goals late in the third quarter. Bears were getting outplayed. But then DeAndre Swift, I never thought I'd say this sentence. DeAndre Swift took over the game. I mean, creating stuff on his own. I didn't think he really had this in him. 18 carries, 129 yards and a touchdown, puts the team on his back. They're about to win the game, and then they get hit with the Jaden Daniels Hail Mary. So this Swift stuff is super impressive right now. Evan, thoughts on the
Yeah.
Bears losing a heartbreaking game in Washington on a Hail Mary?
Yeah, and what really stands out to me regarding DeAndre Swift is their usage of him because they just, I mean, early in the season, they were like trying to run him between the tackles. Like, what are you guys doing? They were incompetent on every level from a coaching standpoint. They still have major coaching problems, which we can get to on this Hail Mary if you want to dissect that. But DeAndre Swift, the way that they use him, they just get him on the edges, man. I mean, they just get him outside, and he looks great when on perimeter runs. Every run that they give it to up in the middle, I don't know if it's just to like keep the defense honest or change the pace or something, but that's a wasted play. And I think that they've kind of come to grips with that. When they get him out on the perimeter, he looks awesome. They're using him as a workhorse in terms of his usage on a week-to-week basis.
Khalil Herbert was healthy scratch in this game. Roshan did steal a goal line carry, but yeah, it's the DeAndre Swift show.
But you're right. You know, coming out of the bye, sometimes, and we looked at this with the when I was doing the fantasy feast, coming out of the bye, teams can be very volatile. And the Bears came out of their bye, and they did not look in sync at all in the passing game. Caleb Williams was doing the scramble drill every play. It didn't help they lost their left tackle, Braxton Jones, and their left guard, Tevin Jenkins. Maybe their two most consistent offensive linemen to injury during the game. It certainly didn't help. But Caleb was under pressure constantly. I kept looking up and seeing Caleb Williams had 4 completions like into the fourth quarter or something. I kept looking.
He was bad.
Are those 4 completions like when he's been under pressure, or just this quarter? He finished with 10. I mean, it was not a good day at all in the passing game for the Bears. And I got to take a big L because you asked me, I think it was on Friday, Bo Nix or Caleb Williams, and I kind of like laughed it off. And I was like, you can't be serious, right? And obviously it turned out to be Bo Nix. But this was not a good game for Caleb Williams or any members of the passing game. And the idiotic play call. I mean, the Bears, I think it was 14-12 or something like that. The Bears were down 2 points, and they gave like a little shovel to Doug Kramer, who's like their 8th offensive lineman. Now, he's kind of like this cult hero because he's from a local high school, and I think he even played at Illinois, and he's been like a lead blocker on the goal line. That is not a play, though, that you call when you're losing or in a one-score game at all. Like that's maybe when you're up 38-14 or something like that. That play call was ridiculous. It winds up turning into a fumble, and without that, I mean, the Bears win this game.
Yeah.
But that was maybe the worst play call of the year. And then on the Hail Mary, everybody's probably seen it by now. Tyreek Stevenson isn't even. They had 3 timeouts. The Bears had 3 timeouts. They could have called a timeout to get everybody kind of ready. Hey, this is what we're doing on the Hail Mary. No, they saved their 3 timeouts for no reason. And then Tyreek Stevens is like, oh, the play is starting. He runs into the scrum. He's the guy who deflects the ball right into Noah Brown's hands. I mean, it was an unbelievable. I was watching this with Bears fans, and I mean, just everybody, right when the game ended, just everybody left. Everybody left, and like that was it. I mean, it was a horrible, horrible finish if you were a Bears fan, and an awesome one if you were a Commanders fan.
Well, not just that, but it was concerning for Caleb, I thought. I don't think the Commanders defense, I know I've been saying this for a few weeks, but I think Commanders defense is better than people give it credit for. Still, Caleb should play better. Should play way better than he did. So if I was a Bears fan, I'd be certainly concerned about that as well. But yeah.
He'd played well enough, I think, over his previous 3 games that I'm willing to forgive him for, especially losing the entire left side of his offensive line. But he cannot get into those bad habits that he developed back at USC, where he is just, he sees the first sign of pressure and he's like running everywhere. Because he did that a million times on Sunday.
Let's go to Dallas. So this was really ugly for most of this game for the Cowboys. I actually thought that Jerry Jones would be so tilted he would go down and fire Mike McCarthy at halftime or in the third quarter or something. But team comes to life. Offense comes to life late thanks to some insane plays from CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb finishes with 13 catches, 146 yards, and 2 touchdowns. But, I mean, too little, too late. I mean, they got smoked by a banged-up 49ers team for much of this game. Cowboys are now 3-4 with some really concerning performances. Like red flags are up on the Cowboys in a big, big way right now. Evan, what do you think of their loss on Sunday night to the 49ers?
Yeah, and I think that that's been the case for the Cowboys for several weeks. Big red flags. They really only have one. I mean, I think they have multiple good players on offense, but they really only have one guy who's playing well, and that's CD Lamb. And even he has been a little inconsistent. I don't think Dak is playing well. That people want Jalen Tolbert to happen, but he's really not a guy who can beat man coverage, and defenses can play him in man coverage and not worry about it. They have they have no running game. Okay, Rico Dowdle was inactive for this game due to an illness. On the season, the Cowboys do not have a single run longer than 13 yards. Their offense is like not functional.
They were like, we're gonna fix this. We're gonna get Dalvin Cook up for this game, and he's gonna like twinkle toe through the line. I mean, it was just disaster. So bad. Yeah. So I don't really know what moves Cowboys can really make here. What they can do is get healthier on defense. I mean, no Micah Parsons in this game, no Deron Bland, no Lawrence, obviously. The defense is bad right now. I mean, one to actually attack until at least Michael Parsons gets back, if not longer. And then the offense is just so thin, like Evan talked about. So I'm not sure what they do. They don't have any room to make moves because they've handled their caps so poorly. So, yeah.
They also have players like yelling at reporters, like Trevon. You see the Trevon Diggs yelling at like, "Yeah, talk to these nuts" or something like that. I mean, and it's like, and he's like PFF's number 155 cornerback or whatever rated on the season.
Yeah.
And the reporter, if you look at the reporter's tweet, I was expecting it to be something, fiery or something. It just said, "What is Trevon Diggs doing on this play?" And then put like, a video of him trying to chase down a guy and like, not really, going all out 100%. It was a tough play for Trevon Diggs to make, but it wasn't that big of a deal.
Yeah, no, they're melting down for sure. Trouble in Dallas. Let's go to the Lions, the exact opposite. I mean, could make a really good case this is the best team in the NFL. Lions moved to 6-1, put up 52 points on the Titans here. They only needed 15 pass attempts from Goff. On those 15 pass attempts, he threw 3 more touchdowns. I mean, Jared Goff MVP case. He may not win it. I think Lamar, Josh Allen are very deserving, but Jared Goff case is at least very much intact. Evan, what do you think of Lions' absolute demolition of the Titans here?
Yeah, he did throw 3 more touchdowns today, and I think his odds the last time I checked are down to 8-1. He was 30-1 before the season, Jared Goff for MVP. I almost thought this game worked against him because it's like, is he really that valuable? Because they can beat you in so many other ways. Also, it sounds like Dan Campbell's strongly hinting that they're going to try to trade for a pass rusher before the deadline. Jahmyr Gibbs has been on fire.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Jamal Charles, he is playing at an incredible clip right now. They got Sam Laporta involved finally, but because Jared Goff throws for 85 yards, and David Montgomery even vultured a passing touchdown in this game. Nobody else is going to have a big game in the, from a receiving standpoint. Jameson Williams has one more game on suspension, and then he will be back.
Yep. The idea that Dink talked about on Saturday, where with Jameson out, there's more Laporta. In other words, they didn't use Jameson very much last year. You got more Laporta. In this game, Laporta just 40% target share out of nowhere on Laporta. 648-1 was the result. Now, obviously, it was very, very small sample. As we said, Jared Goff hardly threw. But one of these was a touchdown pass from David Montgomery, like Evan said. I kind of think it's a chance to sell on Sam Laporta if you wanted to get out from this right now. Jameson will be back after he's suspended one more week. And obviously, you're gonna have games where Amon-Ra dominates and they throw to Tim Patrick and they throw to Khalif Raymond and they run the ball so well. So, yeah, I don't think the thesis on Sam Laporta has really changed. I think he's, in the middle of the pack there among tight ends. I wouldn't freak out and say he's a smash again all of a sudden because of this game. Let's go to the Packers. Packers squeeze out a 30-27 win in Jacksonville. This came behind a Malik Willis game-winning drive. Yes, Malik Willis, because Jordan Love suffered a groin injury on the game's opening drive, tried to play through it, couldn't really move very well, ends up calling it a day in the third quarter. Now, the good news, Evan, is that Jordan Love's injury has been deemed minor. He's day-to-day. My guess is he sits out week 9, but it's such a huge game. I mean, 6-2 Packers versus 6-1 Lions. They do have a bye in week 10, though. So we'll see. They have confidence in Malik Willis, though, man. I mean, he won games for them earlier this year, and he led a fourth quarter touchdown game-winning drive here as well. So what do you think about Packers game and Jordan Love, Malik Willis stuff?
Yeah, Jordan Love is so banged up right now that I think it would be in their best interest to try to make this happen with Malik Willis and try to attack the Lions on the ground. And I'll write about that in matchups depending on who we get. But Malik Willis has looked really good under the tutelage of Matt LaFleur, who I think should still be squarely in the mix for Coach of the Year, considering all that they've been through. But to me, this was the Josh Jacobs game. He was awesome in this game. I still wish that they would involve him more in the passing game, which, by the way, is not going to happen if Malik Willis is starting. But
yeah,
he was a true workhorse in this game. 26 touches, 125 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He was the engine of the offense on Sunday.
I mean, you know the deal with Malik Willis. He only attempted 5 passes despite playing the entire second half. Jacobs ends up with 25 carries, 127 yards, 2 touchdowns. So, yeah, I mean, run game is going to be in massive effect if Malik Willis ends up starting here against the Lions. One thing I want to note along those lines, I like Emmanuel Wilson. I took a bunch of Emmanuel Wilson in best ball, but he was losing real reps to Chris Brooks on Sunday. If they're going to go to 3 guys, man, that is, and Malik Willis is running, like, that's not great. So, yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that was actually happening in the previous game as well. And I kind of didn't think of anything of it, but now that it's happened in 2 straight games, we were talking about Emmanuel Wilson as like, one of the premier stashes in all of fantasy. I don't know if that's the case, if Chris Brooks is going to be like basically splitting number two duties with them.
Yeah, and I haven't heard anything on Marshawn Lloyd lately, but either way, I think that Emmanuel Wilson is in the top tier of the one injury away list. And by the way, if you go to the site, you can find our one injury away list there under the draft kit section. I still think Emmanuel Wilson is in tier 1, but he's not the same as, like, I don't know, Braylon Allen or Zach Charbonnet and guys like that who, if the starter goes down, very clearly they're going to get all the work. Let's go to the Rams. This was back on Thursday night. Great night for the Rams. I mean, they get 2 wins in 5 days. They get Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua both back balling. Suddenly they're 3-4. They have a lot of hopes. They're like, oh, we're not trading Cooper Kupp now. I mean, we're healthy. We're 3-4. We're in the mix. Just really good night and mini bye week here for the Rams. What do you think of their win over the Vikings on Thursday?
Yeah, it was big. Full transparency, if I had Puka Nacua on Thursday and was thinking I would not have started him. The rhetoric before the game was like, they're going to have him in for a limited role. But then sometimes players like get rolling early in the game and the coaches are just like, we'll just let him go. Mm-hmm. And Puka Nacua wound up going for 7 for 106, Cooper Kupp at 5 for 51 and a touchdown. Yeah, I mean, this was a great night for Stafford in what looked like not a great matchup against the Vikings. And Kyren Williams had another big workload game, scored a touchdown in the passing game. I saw quotes from Sean McVay talking about his affinity for Kyren Williams. I think that he would like to get Blake Corum more involved, but as you've talked about a few times, it's just he trusts Kyren Williams so much. Yeah. And Sean McVay was, saying things like he has a nose for the end zone. He lives and breathes in the red area. Like, he's going to continue to score touchdowns all season long.
The Puka thing is crazy, man. I had read that he wasn't expected back until week 9. He comes back in week 7, barely had practiced, and he ends up playing 40 of 71 snaps, 22 routes on 34 Matthew Stafford dropbacks, earns 9 targets, outplays Cooper Kupp 7-106-0, and they gave him 2 carries. I mean, if you're trying to limit him at all, they gave him 2 carries also in this game that went for 5 yards. And then Cooper Kupp was out there. He ran 28 routes on the 34 dropbacks. He earned 8 targets too, scored a touchdown. So it's just, this is why the Rams are so valuable in fantasy, is because it is efficient from the wide receiver kingmaker, Matthew Stafford, and it's so concentrated. Puka, Kupp, and Kyren. And also have this note here, in their 2 games started by both Kupp and Puka, the Rams have a 66% neutral situation pass rate. That would rank first on the full season. So, I mean, them coming out with these two guys and throwing it a ton, it's just exciting, man. And like, I'm just going through all my teams, all my best ball teams, being like, oh my God, let me see if I can find a Puka team here that's still in the mix. Let me find a Cup team here that's still in the mix, because I think it's pretty exciting for them rest of the way.
It's fun. 3 weeks ago, it felt like their season was just completely over.
Yeah.
They were talking about, I mean, there were trade rumors revolving Stafford. There were trade rumors, strong ones, revolving around Cooper Kupp. Now it's like, no, they're going to be good to go the rest of the way.
All right. In that game, let's move to the Vikings here. In that game, Vikings kind of get exposed, I think, a little bit. They did start off real hot. I mean, touchdowns on the first 2 drives, Justin Jefferson shredding, and then they just absolutely sputter out in this spot. It's hard for me to exactly put my finger on what happened here. Obviously, losing Christian Darrisaw for the year is not going to help their left tackle. But Evan, what do you think of Vikings' surprising-ish loss on Thursday night to the Rams?
Yeah, the Darrisaw thing really stings because that was one of the things that they had going for them, is that they could give Sam Darnold a pretty clean pocket, especially from the tackle positions. I mean, Brian O'Neill and Christian Darrisaw is probably one of the best tackle duos in the NFL. You take one of those guys. I don't even know. They're talking about putting Blake Brendel at left tackle. I mean, it's going to be a massive drop off. Christian Darrisaw is one of the guys who watch the end zone view for the offensive line, all 22, like they highlight Christian Darrisaw every week. You know, this is a huge loss. You do not want a skittish Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
So it really, really hurts, man.
Yeah, that's really, really big injury there. Other thing that I had on the Vikings, Aaron Jones came into this game a little bit banged up. He handled 46 snaps compared to 2 for Ty Chandler and 0 for Cam Akers. I don't really know why that happened like that. I'm sure if you ask Kevin O'Connell, he'll say, oh man, we got to get Ty Chandler more work. But it was just like really, really weird. Also, another disappointing game for Jordan Addison in what I thought was a good spot. Jordan Addison only seeing 4.6 targets per game. I did want to note that Darnold is only throwing 27 times per game. It just hasn't gotten into really any shootouts, any voluminous spots for Addison at all. But still, I liked Addison in this spot. I've liked Addison a few times this year, and he just has not come through at all, which has been a concern.
And then he put on his Instagram or something like free 3, which is his number. And people thought he was like requesting a trade, but then he said he's not requesting a trade.
Yeah. He should delete. He should delete his social media, man. With the everything with the dog and it's just a mess. By the way, T.J. Hawkinson finally. I know we've talked about this a million times. I really do think T.J. Hawkinson is going to make his debut here, Week 9 against the Colts. All reports have T.J. Hawkinson ready to rock here, coming up Sunday. Saints go to L.A. to play the Chargers. They were without Derek Carr once again, and they get embarrassed. You know, Jake Hayner, not Spencer Rattler, has to finish out this game. Kendrick Miller gets hurt again. Somehow, Alvin Kamara and Chris Olave both went over 100 total yards, but it was ugly. Good news, Evan. Sounds like Derek Carr will be back here for Week 9. Any thoughts on that and Saints game?
Yeah, I mean, you know, Spencer Rattler showed some nice things when he was in there. At the end of the day, he also showed that he's a 5th-round rookie, and so he can go back to sitting in the meeting rooms. Derek Carr sounds like 100% to be back this week, and that's good, I think, for every member of the offense. He's not going to have Rashid Shaheed, of course, and Bub Means suffered a high ankle sprain in this game. But yeah, they've got a get right matchup with Carolina.
Yeah.
And I think they will be talking about Derek Carr at least a little bit on Friday.
Yeah. And, you know, without Shaheed and with Carr back in there, it's got to be Chris Olave's time. And I know I've said that a million times, but it's got to be Chris Olave's time to be like consistent stud the rest of the way. They need it so bad. I mean,
they also got back multiple interior offensive linemen. So that's good news as well. I mean, I think the arrow is actually starting to point upward for the Saints offense.
Yeah. Just one more on Olave, 14 targets here for a 33% share. If I'm coaching the Saints, like that's what it takes. You know, like you need to get Chris Olave 25, 30% of the targets every single week. Giants. So this was last night. They lose in Pittsburgh. I thought they were competent. You know, didn't go as bad as people thought it would in Pittsburgh without Andrew Thomas. Story of the game was Tyrone Tracy. Tyrone Tracy did leave late with a concussion. However, before that, Tyrone Tracy out-carried Devin Singletary 20-2. And Tracy also saw 3 targets, played incredible. I mean, looked like he was shot out of a cannon, 150 total yards and a touchdown on a really good Steelers defense. We had talked to Ron on a little bit. He was like, yeah, I think it's going to be closer to 50-50. Tracy's playing too well. Maybe their intention was for it to be 50-50. How do you take Tracy off the field for Devin Singletary at this point once he gets back from this concussion protocol stuff? So, Evan, what do you think of Tyrone Tracy last night, and any more Giants thoughts?
I think that, it was evident to me early in the season that Tyrone Tracy was an absolute steal. They got him in the 5th round of the draft. And he's, they don't have dynamic players on offense other than Malik Neighbors and also Darius Slayton, by the way.
Yeah.
But they really don't have dynamic playmakers, and Tyrone Tracy gives them that. And I think they should just continue to ride him. I don't know. I think that Devin Singletary will generally get more than that usually. But Tyrone Tracy is their best back. Brian Daboll was not happy with Daniel Jones after this game, and it made me think that maybe there might start to be some chatter about Drew Lock.
Yeah. So the big one was on the sack fumble that TJ Watt, Daniel Jones failed to move the tight end over to help block on TJ Watt. And I think that's what Daboll was pissed about. Then Dimes also didn't protect the ball. I mean, not only did he not move the tight end, but he didn't protect the ball and he fumbles. And that was a huge, huge play in the game. So, yeah, I mean, it's not like Drew Lock's going to make them any better, but it'll probably be more fun. Like, we can say that. Eagles go into Cincinnati and roll 37-17. Hurts was awesome. I mean, 3 rushing touchdowns, 2 on tush pushes, but 1 on an RPO where he looked really fast and explosive. Hurts also completed 80% of his passes in this game, including just the, easiest buy low of the week we talked about last week was Devonta Smith. He hit him for a 45-yard touchdown. Offense, I thought, clicked for the first time all season. And I played Lamar Jackson over Jalen Hurts this week on FanDuel in cash. I thought that was right. Hurts obviously ended up beating him pretty soundly. Evan thought it should be Hurts over Jackson. So point to Evan on that one. But yeah, this was Hurts and the Eagles offense, I thought, best game of the season. What'd you think of Eagles game in Cincy?
Yeah, and shout out to Daigle, who, on a full week, it's hard to write up 16 games. I had him write up Cincinnati, Philadelphia, and he put in the write-up, Jalen Hurts has 4 touchdowns from scrimmage in his range of potential outcomes, and Jalen Hurts scored 4 touchdowns from scrimmage in this game. So, shout out Daigle. Yeah, I mean, this was I'm still. Where are we at on Lane Johnson? Because I know he went down for a minute in this game.
Yeah, he tweeted.
And they're already without Jordan Mailata.
He tweeted something like, God is good or something like that. I'll try to find if there's been any more information. I haven't seen.
Well, either way, that's something to keep tabs on. They also should be getting Dallas Goedert back sooner rather than later. He's missed a couple games at this point. But, yeah, I mean, this was vintage Eagles offense. And, maybe Jalen Hurts' best game of the season. It did come against Cincinnati, but again, you want to capitalize on matchups like that.
Yeah, it sounds like Lane Johnson's okay. Left with a leg injury, but returned, and sounds like he's going to be okay here for them. Good. By the way, Eagles schedule, man. I mean, I know we've talked about this a bunch, but just to reiterate, their next games coming up: Jaguars, Cowboys, Commanders, Rams, Ravens, Panthers. Then in the fantasy playoffs, week 16 Commanders, week 17 Dallas. I mean, you could not hand pick a better schedule for fantasy players going forward than what the Eagles have. And that was a huge reason they've been, buy lows for any time they've played poorly over the last few weeks. Oh, just want to note on Saquon. So Saquon was awesome again, but this is why it's hard to get a big projection on him weekly. Jalen Hurts stole 3 rushing touchdowns. Saquon only saw 1 target. He played awesome. He had 23 opportunities. Team scored 37 points, but he didn't get the high-value touches. He wasn't in the passing game, and Hurts stole all the rushing touchdowns. And so you don't get the high-value touches, it's hard to score a ton of points. And so when people say, how can you guys, not have Saquon with a bigger projection? I want to have Saquon with a bigger projection, but then we're going to be mega light on Hurts, And so it's just a push-pull there. They keep getting tackled at the 1-yard line. I mean, it's just amazing. Jalen Hurts already has 6 rushing touchdowns from the 1-yard line. They just keep getting tackled there over and over again. It's so crazy. All right. 49ers got out to a 27-10 lead on the Cowboys on Sunday Night Football. hang on for a 30-24 win. Did need a late defensive stand, but still a good win to get them some confidence. Few notes on San Francisco. Jordan Mason went down with a shoulder injury again. Isaac Guerrero comes in and looks awesome. I mean, awesome. Debo, I thought, looked very healthy coming off of the pneumonia, had a 70-yard touchdown called back by penalty. And then Ricky Pearsall also, I thought, looked really good. 4 catches and a 39-yard run on a jet sweep, which is kind of what they give Debo a lot of. So, and CMC sounds like might be back in week 10. So things are looking up big time for the 49ers right now. Evan, what do you think of their win over the
Big
Cowboys?
I did see that Debo came out of this game with rib and oblique injuries,
Yeah,
however.
they called him day to day and they're going into their bye. So I assume that was okay,
Yeah.
but yeah, we'll see.
Okay. But always something, his health is like always something to monitor.
For sure.
But yeah, I mean, I think this was a really promising effort. Again, Dallas defense, whatever, but putting up 30 points anytime is, that's an accomplishment. Guerrero, I mean, they've got 3 backs that they can play and have productive. I mean, they can, assuming that Christian McCaffrey comes back, but I mean, they go really deep in the backfield and they go deep in the pass catcher core. I mean, they're without their theoretical number 1 receiver and their theoretical number 1 running back, or they're certainly their number 1 running back in this game, and they put up 30 points because they're so deep at the skill positions.
100%. 49ers are now 4-4. Like I said, they're probably going to get CMC back in some capacity, it sounds like, in week 10. And Juwan Jennings is also expected back there in week 10. Remember, in the fantasy playoffs, the 49ers face the Rams, the Dolphins, and the Lions. So, 49ers stuff looks really good right now. I would want to have Juwan Jennings on my team also. Sounds like he's going to be fine here coming out in week 10. The Guerrero stuff we talked about on waivers, if you want to hear more about that, but dude can clearly play, I mean, clearly. And I tweeted about him before the draft, and all the draft bros were like, you don't get it. He has no vision. He's just big and fat. I'm like, dude,
he's just big and fat.
He's big and fast. And he's going to get, like you're out there, you're big and you're fast. A lot of times that just works out, and Isaac Guerrero looks like
he's definitely not fat. I can tell you that.
No, he is a beast. Okay. Seahawks. Absolute faceplant here for the Seahawks in a home test against the Buffalo Bills. Now, Geno Smith did not have DK Metcalf in this game. As Evan talked about, Bills forced everything underneath, and they just could not overcome it. Geno, 29 pass attempts, completes 21, but only for 212 yards and no touchdowns. Kenneth Walker carried the ball 9 times for 12 yards. So just a total faceplant here for Seahawks offense. Evan, what do you think of their game?
Yeah, just a throwaway game. I mean, it was a total boat race by Buffalo. Nothing really went right. I mean, Jackson Smith and Jigba had 6 for 69, and that was like the most positive box score that anybody put up. Yeah, on the entire roster. So it's a throwaway game. It does sound like DK Metcalf is almost certainly going to be back this week.
Yeah. One thing that concerned me in this spot, I like Tyler Lockett in this spot. I played him a little bit in tournaments. Luckily, didn't end up on him in cash at all. Tyler Lockett, 1 catch for 9 yards on 3 targets with DK Metcalf out. Maybe Tyler Lockett just isn't able to be an option that can be leaned on. JSN, 24% of the targets here. That's what he needs when he sees so many targets so close to the line of the scrimmage. Second to last NFC team is the Tampa Bay Bucks. So what we saw here was the first Bucks game without Chris Godwin and Mike Evans came against the Falcons. They obviously lost the game. Jalen McMillan led them in routes with 46. Then Trey Palmer with 39. Then Sterling Shepard with 37. Sterling Shepard battled a bit of a hamstring thing during this game. Ryan Miller with 17. Raheem Jarrett with 11. Slot snaps, Shepard had 27. McMillan 19. Palmer 14. McMillan was like wide open for what would have been a very long touchdown. Baker missed him. But still, I'm not sure that McMillan separated in a way that we would have probably wanted. Evan, what do you think of Bucks' first game here without their top 2 wide receivers?
Yeah, I actually thought it was a decent effort from Jalen McMillan, and the misses were mostly on Baker. But Cade Otton was the story. I mean, and they're calling plays for him. I think he showed that he has some juice. He scored 2 touchdowns, had 81 yards. I believe he had 9 for 81 on 10 targets. he's been an efficient player. It's just they don't call plays for him because they had Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. But he's going to be out there 100% of the time. Godwin's out for the year. Evans is out until what? He's out for a while.
I think week 11 or week
So,
12, they
yeah,
said
I
Mike
think
Evans
week
will be back.
12.
Yeah.
So Otten is kind of going to be here to stay. I thought that the running game was interesting after the game. Todd Bowles was talking about why Rashad. They went back to Rashad White as mainly their the number one guy among three. Sean Tucker kind of got weeded out. He only played 7 snaps, and they attributed it largely to Rashad White's pass blocking. Bucky Irving had some awesome runs in this game and has had some awesome runs over the course of the season, but they don't trust him in that particular aspect. So nod goes to the veteran. And that's probably why Rashad White, even though I don't think he's as good of a runner as Bucky Irving, is going to remain the Bucs, nominal 1A back with Bucky Irving as the 1B.
Yeah. So Cade Otton saw a ton of targets, obviously, as we expected. We had huge projection on Cade Otton. He hit. The running backs also saw a ton of targets. That's something we talked about last week also, 14 targets for the running backs. And so, yeah, McMillan had 7 targets to lead all wide receivers. That's only a 14% share. And I guess that was kind of how I thought it would go for the Bucs until Mike Evans got back. A lot of targets to running backs, a lot of targets to tight ends, and see if the wide receivers can give you anything. I would have loved to see them trade for Deontay Johnson, but yeah, just didn't happen. Let's go to, and there are other wide receivers out there. Like, it's not dead that the Bucs don't figure out another wide receiver they can go get. Last NFC team is the Washington football team. So obviously they win on the Hail Mary. Jaden Daniels, I think I was somewhat surprised. I think Evan was pretty surprised that Jaden Daniels played through this rib issue. He looked mostly fine. He still ran it 8 times for 52 yards. But man, this Hail Mary sent him over 300 yards, gets him his lone touchdown, and wins the game. Crazy, crazy play at the end. Evan, what do you think of Jaden Daniels playing through the rib injury here in the Commanders game against the Bears?
I know that it didn't really show. It didn't fully show in the box score. Jaden Daniels was awesome in this game. His footwork, his vision. He is one of these guys that sometimes you'll get quarterbacks, especially running quarterbacks, that they'll drop their eyes sooner than they should. He keeps his eyes downfield. The Washington shredded the Bears. I know that they only put up 18 points and
field goals.
Yeah, it's all these field goals. They went for almost 500 total yards.
Yeah.
This is a really good Bears defense. Washington absolutely ate them up. Zach Ertz was doing whatever he wanted. Terry McLaurin is freaking awesome. Jaden Daniels is awesome. It was, I think, a really good, another promising effort from the Washington offense, which has become an offense that we can hang our hat on week to week.
Yeah, I've been impressed with Terry McLaurin, man, because they're getting him the ball short on the horizontal raid stuff, but he had a 61-yard catch here also, and he's getting those targets deep down the field too. At Giants,
that was another Tyreek Stevenson. He beat Tyreek Stevenson on that 61-yarder.
Yeah,
the same guy who deflected the ball to Noah Brown for the touchdown.
Yeah. Commanders are at the Giants next in the fantasy playoffs. Really strong schedule for the Commanders: Saints, Eagles, Falcons. So obviously looking really, really good here for Jaden Daniels and his pass catchers. All right, let's move it over to the AFC now. We'll start with the Buffalo Bills. Bills go to Seattle and just smoke the DK Metcalf-less Seattle Seahawks 31-10. They were in total control the whole game. You get a big James Cook game. You get a big Khalil Shakir game. I think the guy that everyone wants to talk about, Evan, is you get the big Keon Coleman game here. Now, Keon Coleman's played really well the last 2 weeks, which has coincided with the arrival of Amari Cooper. I don't really think there's causation there. It's just kind of random, I think. But it's still super interesting. What do you think of Keon Coleman right now and any other Bills thoughts as they roll in Seattle?
Yeah, they've also started to give Keon Coleman more high percentage stuff. He's lined up in the slot a few extra times, and as opposed to just running him on the outside, isolation routes on the outside, they're not doing that, and that's really going to help Keon Coleman's volume on a week-to-week basis. This game was just exactly how Joe Brady, their offensive coordinator, would like to draw up every game. Their running game is cooking. James Cook just runs with a lot of velocity for a guy who I think measured in at like 199 coming out of college. Like he runs hard, man. And Ray Davis is a stud compliment to him. Their running game, like they can bully you with their running game.
Absolutely.
Josh Allen had another really nice game. I mean, Khalil Shakir getting him back, like Amari Cooper didn't really do anything. And I think that he'll come along, but I don't know, this was like almost the perfect game. I think that they'll make sure in their next game to get the ball to Amari Cooper. I mean, they just acquired him. They'll make sure to keep him happy.
Yeah, so routes in this game, Josh Allen dropped back 38 times. Amari Cooper only ran 23 routes. Khalil Shakir, 28. Keon Coleman, 28. Mac Hollins, 17. I would note that Curtis Samuel was inactive for this game with a pectoral injury. Sounds like he's more week to week than day to day. Just, I know people keep asking about Dalton Kincaid, because I took a ton of Dalton Kincaid this year. Like in the 5th round, when Dalton Kincaid got to me, I took him a ton. If you would have told me when I back then that Dalton Kincaid would be leading the team at 20% of the targets, that the Bills are one of the best teams in the entire NFL, that they're running plenty of plays. If you told me that before the season, I would have said Dalton Kincaid's an absolute turbo smash here in round 5. But they have been so run heavy and somewhat conservative, somewhat boomer ballish. It just hasn't worked out as well. Kincaid did get a touchdown here, though, which was good to see. Let's go to the Bengals. So T. Higgins hurt his quad in practice on Friday. He couldn't play in this game against the Eagles. And I think that hurt them. I mean, the Bengals were inefficient. It took Joe Burrow 37 pass attempts to hit 234 yards in a 20-point home loss to the Eagles. So pretty disappointing offensive performance from the Bengals here. Evan, what do you think of their loss to the Eagles?
Yeah, tough one. And they got nothing from Yoshi. And their running game is just, I mean, it's just dead in the tracks. One thing that a lot of the tape guys talk about, Kurt Warner, Robert Mays on the Athletic Show, the Bengals are like in shotgun constantly, and they don't run. And it's hard to run play action at a shotgun. They really have no play action passing game. You think it's because maybe Joe Burrow doesn't like to turn around to, turn his back to the defense, which some quarterbacks over the years just don't like to do that. But it takes away from your play action game, which can help your running game and also slows down the pass rush. But it has a limiting effect on them, especially when they don't have T. Higgins out there making, dominant alpha receiver catches. And they were really able to hold Jamar Chase in check. Jamar Chase had 9 for 54. So it just their offense was not click. It has been clicking on all cylinders when everybody is at full strength, but they lose a guy and it's not hitting it on full strength. And this was a disappointing one because typically you can get it in on the Eagles, especially in the passing game, and the Bengals really did not. And again, they ran the ball with very, very little success against Philadelphia.
Yeah. So I think that T. Higgins is more day to day than week to week. Sounds like he actually had an okay chance to actually play in this game. Wasn't able to, but I think, optimistic for week 9 here. They play the Raiders next, and then they play at Ravens. So 2 pretty good spots for Joe Burrow to get it going here, assuming that he does indeed have T. Higgins. Just remember the fantasy playoff schedule for the Bengals is very difficult. Browns, Broncos in week 16 and 17. Certainly not ideal. Yeah, on the Yoshi thing, he airballed here with T. Higgins out. That's his 3rd game that he really has not done much with T. Higgins on the sideline. It seems like they prefer to just be like, you know what? Let's just get Mike Gesicki going. And Mike Gesicki is going to be a bigger part of the pass game here when T. Higgins is out than Yoshi is. Jermaine Burton flashed for a long catch here in this game. Long term, I think they might, if Jermaine Burton has his head on straight, he gives them way higher ceiling than Yoshi. I mean, pretty clearly as T. Higgins replacement. Let's go to the Broncos. So people said that our Bo Nix projection was absurd for this game. I was like, we better triple check this, guys, because it was outrageous. Bo Nix, maybe in a nod to how bad the Panthers are, but also a nod to Bo Nix has played good ball over the last month. Bo Nix, 28 of 37 for 284, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and runs for a touchdown. I mean, either this Panthers defense is really bad or Bo Nix is getting better, or there's something in between here. Evan, what do you think of Broncos' demolition of the Panthers?
Yeah, I just didn't know if I thought that Nix was a good play, but I thought he was a floor play. I just did not know if he had a really big game inside of him like that. Obviously, he did. Obviously, it came against the Panthers, but he got it done. So that was really nice to see. Did you see Sean Payton absolutely lighting up Cortland Sutton on the sideline after
No, I
he
didn't.
lost a fumble?
I didn't.
Yeah, oh my God. He was all over Cortland Sutton's ass. And Cortland Sutton had a nice game here, 8 for 111. He's been all over the place with Bo Nix. But Sean Payton was it was in his ear about a lost fumble.
Yeah.
How did Javonte finish? Javonte
Yeah, not
17
good.
for 44. Yeah, I was expecting a lot more from him. So a step back for him.
Yeah, usage was good on Javonte, and I played Javonte everywhere. Usage was good. 21 touches here. He turned into 52 yards against the Panthers. Just really weird. They do play the Ravens next. So, expecting a pass heavy game plan like everyone has against the Ravens here for the Broncos coming up in week 9. Let's go to the Jaguars. Honestly, Jaguars played well enough to beat the Packers at home. I keep saying this about the Jaguars. It seems like every week they play well enough to win. They could not stop Malik Willis and the run game in the second half. Jaguars now fall to 2-6. The big news coming out of this game, Evan, Christian Kirk done for the year, broke his collarbone. He was having a terrible year anyways, and I wasn't excited to have him, but still another wide receiver injury that is out for the year. Also, Brian Thomas Jr. and Gabe Davis left this game with injuries. Brian Thomas Jr. chest, Gabe Davis shoulder. They're both sound minor day to day. We'll see about their status for week 9. So a cluster of injuries here for the Jaguars at the wide receiver position. What did you think of their game against the Packers?
Well, I think that their offense is starting to come together, which is ironic that it happens at the same time that they lose Christian Kirk. I think that Parker Washington will step in immediately for Christian Kirk and be their slot receiver the rest of the way. With Trevor Lawrence playing better now, I think that can be a fairly productive position in deeper PPR leagues. I think that Parker Washington can have some value in those kind of formats.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, direct one-for-one placement. Parker Washington played reasonably last year. I do think the biggest winner of all these cluster injuries will be Evan Ingram. Evan Ingram splits without Christian Kirk last year were awesome. And yeah, I mean, Evan Ingram is the guy that Trevor Lawrence trusts most, and he's going to be out there earning a ton of targets going forward, I think. Travis Etienne missed this game. Tank Bigsby gets 21 opportunities. Kind of expecting Travis Etienne back next week to turn this into some kind of timeshare. And when they get behind, you won't see Bigsby out there very much. But yeah, just wanted to note another big workload here for Tank Bigsby, and he did fine on it. Chiefs. Kermit the Frog narrative was in play here as the Chiefs went to Vegas. Of course, some Raiders players made fun of Mahomes back in July. Mahomes said that it would get handled when it gets handled. Well, it didn't really get handled. I mean, they won, and Mahomes was fine. But the Raiders were only down 17-13 in the fourth quarter of this game. So it was far from a blowout. Evan, what do you think of Chiefs win in Vegas?
Yeah, I mean, the Chiefs haven't really been, a blowout team. Their offense isn't really, they had another game here where they didn't have, I guess they had 2 completions over 20 yards. But I mean, they're not really like a big play offense anymore. I mean, they give the ball to Kareem Hunt 21 times for 59 yards. They kind of grind it out. They play good defense. And you would think that this would be a team that they could blow out, but they didn't. The Raiders kind of hung around. I don't think that anything has really changed. We could talk about DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah, 24 routes on 44 dropbacks here for DeAndre Hopkins in his Chiefs debut.
That'll grow, but
yeah, I'm curious what you think. It strikes me that Kelsey and Hopkins run the same routes and kind of win the same way. I'm a little worried that Hopkins is going to get overshadowed by Kelsey a lot here. Kelsey had 10 catches here on 12 targets, but yeah, how do you think those two fit together? I think it's an interesting question.
I mean, I think that theoretically, the way that the Chiefs have talked about DeAndre Hopkins, like they want him to fill like the Rashee Rice role.
Yeah.
And,
I don't know if
and
I see that. He's just not good enough in yak, you know?
yeah, he's never been that great in yak, but he can make the. Rashee Rice had more downfield plays this year than last year. I think DeAndre Hopkins can do that, and like DeAndre Hopkins, just route winning stuff over the last 2 years from the slot has been really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of yak, you can't expect Rashee Rice level production.
By the way, another 20+% target share game for Xavier Worthy, 21% here this time. They're trying to get the ball to Xavier Worthy. He scored a touchdown, but it just has not happened consistently where he's able to be like a load bearing NFL wide receiver, even though they're kind of trying to do it. Raiders. So, like I said, they hung in this game. Minshew was 24 of 30 for 2 touchdowns, no interceptions against a really good Chiefs defense. Getting Jacoby Myers back. And this is like what I was talking about when we talked about the Raiders over the last few weeks. With no Devontae Adams, you were going to get Jacoby Myers a ton of the targets. I mean, here, Jacoby and Brock Bowers combined for 40% of the targets. I think we could see that be 50 a lot of weeks. Like Jacoby and Brock Bowers combining for 50% of the targets each week. And honestly, I know it's ugly, but that kind of excites me for both them, Jacoby and Brock Bowers. Evan, what do you think of Raiders' loss to the Chiefs?
Yeah, and I think that I think we both probably had some optimism about Trey Tucker at one point, but that has kind of fallen by the wayside. They're not going to be able. The Raiders are not going to be able to support more than 2 fantasy relevant pass catchers on a weekly basis, and those guys are going to be Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers. And my God, their running game is just
Right.
absolute garbage. I mean, it's like them and the Cowboys just cannot run the ball whatsoever.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I mean, you should be even more pass heavy. And then this week they get to play the Bengals, and it's like, okay, I had Jacoby Myers. I need to start him. I'm not opposed to that against the Bengals, so we'll see. Chargers. Easy win for the Chargers at home over the Saints. And again, we see them let Justin Herbert get loose a little bit. 32 more pass attempts for Justin Herbert, even in a game they controlled. They won 26-8, leads to 279 passing yards. This is Justin Herbert's 3rd straight game with at least 32 attempts. So I don't want to say it's a philosophy change, but it's just good to see that they're at least letting Justin Herbert get a bunch of passes off in these games. Evan, what do you think of Chargers win over the Saints?
Yeah, I think that they're feeling a lot more confident about their passing game, and that shows up in their play calling. Ladd McConkey was incredible in this game. I've been very skeptical of him to this point just because of the nature of the offense. After the game, Jim Harbaugh compared him to Steve Smith. And, you think, all right, not that big of a dude, white dude, slot guy. No, I mean, Ladd McConkey was a guy who won outside at Georgia when he was healthy. He was hurt a lot, but he won outside at Georgia. They play him plenty outside with the Chargers. Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that is on the wide receiver 3. He's in the wide receiver 3 mix every week, and maybe even more than that if they continue to let Justin Herbert loose.
Yeah, Sims absolutely loved Ladd McConkey on Sunday, and I just didn't play it. So frustrating. That play that he made, like, it was like a 60-yard touchdown. It looked like his Georgia highlights, where he's like kind of makes a play out by the boundary, makes a couple guys miss, and runs for a touchdown. I mean, they have a hit with Ladd McConkey here.
Yeah,
For
they
sure.
also have a hit with J.K. Dobbins. I mean,
Yeah.
he didn't have a big efficiency game at all here, but he had. I mean, they are willing to give him the ball a lot. He had 21 more touches.
Yeah, and he's getting there in the opposite way that I thought he'd get there. I thought he'd be good on efficiency, and they couldn't give him that much volume. It's been the opposite. He hasn't topped 3.8 yards per carry since week 2, has J.K. Dobbins, but he's on pace for an incredible amount of carries and also 46 catches. I mean, just so much volume for J.K. Dobbins right now. Chargers play at the Browns next. Patriots. I mean, great win here for the Patriots against their hated rival, the Jets, 25-22 at home. They did lose Drake May in this game. He was like scrambling down the field, and a defender came on top of him, kind of hit his head. Joey Brissett comes in and leads the team to a win. Not sure on Drake May's status for week 9. I believe he is in the concussion protocol right now. Evan, what do you think of Patriots win over the Jets?
Yeah, Gerard Mayo calls out his team for being soft, and then the next week they respond with, this is their Super Bowl, basically beating the Jets. Yeah, I mean, Jacoby Brissett played really well. The numbers don't reflect it. There were a bunch of drops. I know Greg Rosenthal was talking about how he tried to count the drops, and there were like 7 on Jacoby Brissett's 7 attempt on Jacoby Brissett's 24 attempts. 7 drops on 24 attempts. That's a large number. Okay, they didn't run the ball well at all. I don't, that's been a week to week issue. You kind of never know. I mean, Ramondre Stevenson got a ton of work, but whether he's successful in the running game, that kind of depends on the offensive line, the opponent. You've been able to run the ball against the Jets, but the Patriots could not. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. We'll have to see on Drake May because he's in the concussion protocol.
When Drake May's out there, the one that I feel best about playing is Hunter Henry, just because tight end is already so weak, and Hunter Henry has shown rapport with Drake May, and Hunter Henry has shown an ability to have big games. I mean, that's about it for me on Patriots stuff right now. Jets. So this is night for the Jets, man. I mean, they fall to 2-6 with a horrific loss to the Patriots team, which, as we mentioned, lost Drake May, came into this game 1-6 on the season. I mean, what have the Jets done here? They've gone all in. They've gotten all of Aaron Rodgers' boys. They've paid absurd amounts to get Hassan Reddick in the mix. They traded for and took on all of Devontae Adams' salary, and now they're sitting here at 2-6. And by the way, like, I kind of think it was the right move to try to go for it. I thought they had a really good roster on paper, like really good. It was just so thin, and like a couple bad things break, and next thing you know, you're 2-6 here, and like you're so far away from being good now because you've completely blown out all your assets. So scary times to be a Jet fan right now. As usual, Evan, what do you think of their loss to the Patriots?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think that Aaron Rodgers played poorly in this game. And, he's dealing with injuries to both of his knees, his hamstring, and his ankle. I mean, he's a 41-year-old guy. Like I know what that is because I'm 41.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, one of these soft YouTube commenters last week called me 50. I'm not 50, okay? I'm 41. God, anyway, I got to start reading the comments.
Stop reading the comments. Jesus.
But yeah, I mean, Aaron Rodgers is going through it. I mean, he doesn't trust his offensive line. He's hurt. That he feels the weight of the world on his shoulders right now. And their running game has been pretty up and down. They haven't been good against the run, although they were in this particular game. I don't think they're second. Well, they've had injuries at number 2 and 3 corner, and Sauce Gardner has not really been the shutdown force that he has been in past years. Their pass rush has been up and down. They got back Hassan Reddick, but he had 2 pressures and 0 tackles. Their offensive line is bad. I mean, they're really mediocre. I mean, 4 of their losses have been by 1 score. Okay?
Right.
And 3 of them have been by 3 points or less. They're just a mediocre team.
Yeah.
I don't think they're a bad team. I think that they're just mediocre. They've had some bad luck, and their quarterback is ancient.
One of my things, and I bet the Jets to make the playoffs. I bet the Jets to win the AFC East. One of my things was like, how could they not have one of the best defenses in the league? I mean, they're so talented on defense, but they have not had anything close. In fact, defense has been leaky. And I saw someone on Twitter say he's not Sauce Gardner anymore. We have to call him Ahmed. I mean, this dude is not playing like Sauce Gardner. He is Ahmed Gardner going forward to me. So I don't know, man. Like, defense has been like massively disappointing to me for the Jets. Massively. They do have schedules opening up. I mean, soon. Cardinals, Colts, Seahawks, Dolphins, Jaguars, Rams are all coming up. So I still want to have Brees. I still want to have Garrett Wilson. I still want to have Devontae Adams. But yeah, from a team level perspective, it's not good. Steelers. So this was Russell Wilson's second start as a Steeler on Monday Night Football. And again, it goes very well. This time, Russ goes 20 of 28 for 278 yards and a touchdown against the Giants. Could have been more. He had a couple touchdowns called back. Team ended up kicking 4 short field goals. I thought Russ would be average at best, probably below average. For at least these first 2 games, he's been impressive. Steelers are 6-2 now. Evan, what do you think of Steelers' win over the Giants last night?
Well, I think that Mike Tomlin was right, and he just, when he made that decision to go from Justin Fields to Russell Wilson, he described it as a Lone Ranger decision, and it absolutely was. I mean, myself included, I think that 95% of people that pay attention to football were questioning that, and it's unlocked George Pickens. I think it's unlocked. You can make an argument that it's unlocked their running game. Their offensive line is playing better. When you have a quarterback that runs around a lot, the offensive linemen don't always know where he is. Offensive linemen, I don't want to speak for all offensive linemen, but offensive linemen like to know where the quarterback is in the pocket. And at this point, Russell Wilson is not a quarterback that runs around a ton. Justin Fields was. And I think that it's just, I don't know, it's added like a steadying element to the Steelers offense. Russ has made some incredible throws.
Yeah.
He made several to Pickens in this game. He made one to Calvin Austin. Calvin Austin also had a 72-yard punt return touchdown. Najee Harris has 3 straight 100-yard rushing games. So, I mean, Mike Tomlin was right. I'm going to leave it at that.
After like literally 10 years, the double dip and showdown finally hit. If you played Calvin Austin with Steelers D last night, you get the 6-point touchdown from Calvin Austin for returning it. You get the 6 points for Steelers defense for a kickoff return touchdown. And then later you get the Calvin Austin reception touchdoan. So
the last time that it happened was with Calvin Austin's older brother, Tavon Austin, 10 years ago.
People are making that play for literally 10 years, and it finally got there last night. Yeah, the Najee stuff. Najee hurdled a dude last night. Not like a mini hurdle, like a full-blown hurdle. I don't know what's gotten into this guy. Najee's playing his ass off, man. I mean, really is playing his ass off. And Jaylen Warren was efficient here, but Najee's been better. And I was on Jaylen Warren before the season, but Najee's been straight up better. There's no doubt.
And I just want to say, like, the way that Russell Wilson plays, he's always been a quarterback that throws the ball downfield aggressively and throws the ball into the end zone at like the highest rate in the league. Rich Rebar used to highlight this all the time. That is George Pickens' game.
Yeah.
I want the ball down the field, along the sidelines, and or into the end zone. George Pickens will get that, and they're meshing.
He made some really good catches last night, did George Pickens. The one that he messed up was where he bounced on the same foot twice instead of getting his other foot down in the end zone. But yeah, and then he had another touchdown called back by penalty. So it could have been a much, much bigger George Pickens game. Commanders and then Ravens next 2 games here for the Steelers. Last team to hit today is the Tennessee Titans. So we got another Mason Rudolph start here, this time in an absolutely impossible spot at Detroit. I guess the big story for the Titans was Calvin Ridley in the first game without DeAndre Hopkins finally gets loose. 10 catches, 143 yards on 15 targets, 39% target share for Calvin Ridley here. Evan, I'm curious if you think that is sticky. Mason Rudolph seems like he's a better option than Will Levis right now, but I do think they will go back to Will Levis once healthy. What do you think of Titans' ugly loss at Detroit?
These two teams are just, on totally different planets. We'll talk about the individual players. Yeah, Calvin Ridley. So Dink was all over Calvin Ridley, right?
That was his flag plant. Yeah, flag plant was Calvin Ridley.
Jeez, that is an incredible call. I just never know what to think because I actually do think that Calvin Ridley is a good player, a good talent who runs, like, he can be devastating as a route runner in the intermediate. But this year and last year, he's played on offenses that didn't have another field stretcher. So the offenses would use him as the field stretcher. I mean, his ADOT is like 18 to 20 yards or something this season. And then when you combine that with inconsistent and or poor quarterback play with running low probability, high volatility routes down the football field, like, you're going to have like goose egg games, which he's had.
Mm-hmm.
But in this one, it clicked. Lions, I think, have been improved on defense this year, but again, citing Rich Rebar, the Lions have given up a ton of huge games to number 1 receivers, and that's what happened here in Calvin Ridley's case. He'll be the number 1 for the rest of the season, obviously, with no DeAndre Hopkins there.
Yeah, I'm just not sure how sticky the Ridley stuff is because it's not like
I just think he's going to be a spike player.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not like DeAndre Hopkins had a huge role anyways. DeAndre Hopkins was only averaging 3.5 targets per game. One thing that I did like more for Calvin Ridley here was his ADOT came down to 12 yards. That was his second lowest in a game this season. Get him more intermediate stuff, like Evan said.
Awesome.
That's where he wins.
That's a great ADOT for Calvin Ridley.
Yeah, that's where he wins. So, you can't just have him running down the field. And I think that's one reason he was so frustrated early in the year. Maybe they're making some changes here, and that would make the Ridley stuff more sticky, in my opinion. Tajee Spears missed this game. Will Levis missed this game. I'm not sure on the status of either one for week 9. They do play the Patriots, though. And as I said, I do think they've been adamant that they want to get another look at Will Levis before they close the book on him over Mason Rudolph. So we'll see. All right. That is going to do it for this week 8 edition of Team by Team. If anyone's listening to this on audio, really think you'll get more out of it. If you watch on YouTube, tons of graphics and highlights on there, as well as we talk through a bunch of this stuff and a ticker. We've added a ticker for those people who like that with some information along the bottom. So head to YouTube, type in Established Run in the search bar, hit subscribe. There, you'll get it. For Evan, producer Luke, producer Ryan, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.